you know the difference between a sermon and a homily? It's a trick question. Technically, there is no difference, just different words for the same thing, but most folks probably think a homily will be shorter. Sure, let's pretend that's true. What about the difference between a homily and a momily? Preachers preach homilies, moms offer momilies, maternal pearls of wisdom. I've selected a few to share. Just because Susie jumps off a bridge doesn't mean you have to. Always wear clean underwear. You might get hit by a car and taken to a hospital. Be careful what you wish for, you might get it. So it's raining, you're not sugar, you won't melt. Don't cross your eyes or they'll freeze that way. Just wait until you have children of your own. I share these homilies, of course, because it's Mother's Day. But in the church's calendar, today is special for a different reason. It's the fourth Sunday of Easter, which we celebrate as Good Shepherd Sunday. Every year on the fourth Sunday of Easter, we always read the 23rd Psalm. This morning, the King James Version. Excuse me. That most beloved of Psalms that begins, "The Lord is my shepherd." And always we read from the 10th chapter of Acts, in which in part Jesus says, "I am the good shepherd." It's the shepherd chapter in John. Well, every now and then the fourth Sunday of Easter coincides with the second Sunday in May, and Good Shepherd Sunday meets Mother's Day. This coincidence of feast days, one religious and one secular, invites us to consider the ways in which a shepherd's care for a flock is like a mother's care for her children, and how both alike are like the love of God made known to us in Jesus. And maybe that's all the sermon you need. But in truth, I have some reservations. Over the course of my ordained ministry, I've generally downplayed Mother's Day. In the first place, it's not a religious holiday. It's not on the church calendar. And the sentimentality that pervades the cultural celebration of Mother's Day complicates the day for us. But sentimentality complicates Good Shepherd Sunday as well. It's been said that sheep look to us like adorable little land clouds. We hear sheep and our brains get fluffy. The life of a shepherd looks so serene to us. But our romanticized images do not suffice. The life of a shepherd was hard. The work could be dangerous. It was certainly dirty, tiring. Back to Mother's Day. I am painfully aware that not every person celebrates Mother's Day easily. For some, the day brings as much grief as joy. A friend of mine posted on Facebook just this morning that her mother died earlier that same day. What will that celebration of Mother's Day be like for her? mother's grief, indeed, might pervade the day following the death of a child, or a woman regretting not able to have children, or scars an adult feels from a mother's love that did not protect or nurture. Not everyone celebrates Mother's Day easily. Not every mother has lived up to either the cultural ideals laid upon her or to her own expectations of herself. There are mothers, fathers too, of course, who fail their children, who diminish rather than build them up. Not all mothers nor all fathers have succeeded in nurturing their children. Back to shepherds, the same's true. And that's the whole point of the 10th chapter of John. When earlier in this chapter Jesus refers to himself as the good shepherd, he's distinguishing himself from other so-called shepherds who fail to live up to the biblical ideal, which is mostly political. Rulers and leaders, sometimes called shepherds in the Bible, they should care for God's people. Well, Jesus criticizes in this chapter of John, criticizes thieves and bandits who only want to fleece those they should protect, and hired hands who care more for their own skins than for their sheep. A good shepherd, on the other hand, watches out for the well-being of the whole flock. A good shepherd is wholly committed to care for all the sheep of that flock. In a sermon for Good Shepherd Sunday, the Episcopal priest and preacher Barbara Brown Taylor describes a few things she learned about sheep and shepherds from a friend of hers. This is what she says in part. Cattle are herded from the rear by hooting cowboys and cracking whips, but that will not work with sheep at all. Stand behind them making loud noises, and they will run, and all they will do is run around behind you because they prefer to be led. You push cows, my friend said, but you lead sheep. And they will not go anywhere that someone else does not go first, namely their shepherd, who goes ahead of them to show them that everything is all right. And she continues, sheep tend to grow fond of their shepherds, my friend went on to say. It never ceased to amaze him growing up that he could walk right through a sleeping flock without disturbing a single one of them, while a stranger could not step foot in the fold without causing pandemonium. Pandemonium. A word evoking the kind of chaos surrounding leaders whose steps show them to be strangers to the kind of good shepherd Jesus describes in this 10th chapter of John. In this morning's gospel, that portion of chapter 10 that we read this morning, in this morning's gospel, Jesus says, "My sheep hear my voice." As I pondered what Jesus says to us this morning, these are the words that catch my attention more than any of the others. Jesus says, "My sheep hear my voice." We need to take care when listening for that voice. For there are a lot of voices out there calling us. Some voices would divide us, saying it's okay for us to limit our concern for some at the expense of others. Voices that would impose conditions on God's love, parsing out God's love to those who deserve our care and those who don't. But the voice of the Good Shepherd is one that speaks words of unconditional love for us and for all of God's children. Jesus says, "My sheep hear my voice." And it occurs to me that it will be easier for us to hear the shepherd's voice in our own day if we pay attention to what Jesus has already been saying. There was that hot day beside a well in Samaria. Jesus spoke with a woman there, crossing both gender and ethnic divides. He offered her living water when all was said and done, and in doing so declared that God's love is for all people. There was a time Jesus looked up to see Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus had climbed up a tree, despised tax collector. Jesus called Zacchaeus to come down so that Jesus could invite himself to dinner at Zacchaeus' house. Jesus dined with sinners rather than condemned them. Jesus challenged the rules that prioritize law over compassion. The law doesn't restrict us, he insisted. Rather, love for one another fulfills the law. That's what Jesus told us. Jesus told stories to enlarge our imagination. Remember that story about the Good Samaritan? An outsider who understood what love requires of us better than priests and teachers. Love those whom you find most appalling. There was a time when a crowd wanted Jesus to side with them against a woman accused of adultery. But Jesus reminded them that we all fall short. None of us in any position to condemn another. The love of God is not contingent on merit. It's always a gift. There was a time a leper asked for mercy. And Jesus did more than speak platitudes. Jesus reached out in love and touched him, showing us all that love is not afraid to touch the untouchable. I could go on all day. Those are but a few examples, reminders of what Jesus said, how he showed us what a good shepherd looks like, sounds like. My sheep hear my voice, Jesus says, adding, I know them and they follow me. If you've been here for a while, you know I'm not here every week. Last Sunday, where I go to church in Fort Collins, they used an alternative affirmation of faith in place of the Nicene Creed, and in that affirmation we have affirmed this about Jesus. We believe in Jesus of Nazareth, who is our brother, who wants not to be idolized, but to be followed. That's what biblical sheep do. They follow. And just as it'll be easier to hear the shepherd's voice if we pay attention to what Jesus has already been saying, it'll be easier to follow where Jesus is leading if we note where Jesus went, the places and people he went. Reminds me a little of your mission statement. It's like apprentices who learn from observing an expert. So I come back to this coincidence of feast days, Good Shepherd Sunday and Mother's Day. Both shepherds and mothers make for potent images for God and God's love for us, all of us, children of one God, sheep of God's own flock. So on this day, I invite you to recall both a good shepherd's trusted care and a good mother's steadfast love. Don't settle for the disappointments. Don't settle for the merely conventional and sentimental images that come quickly to mind. Go past them to discern the toughness of a real shepherd's love. Go deeper to discern in God's maternal love, a love that is nurturing and protective of all God's children, a love that emboldens us to follow and do the same in our own time and place. I want to leave you with a poem this morning. I've gone back and forth on whether I would include this. It speaks of a mother's love. It's a sweet poem, really. But I hear something more. Words that invite us to imagine God as a mother whose love extends to all children, never willing to leave any out in the cold. It's called, Are All the Children In? I think oftentimes as the night draws nigh of an old house on the hill, of a yard all wide and blossom-starred where the children played at will. And when the night at last came down, hushing the merry din, mother would look around and ask, Are all the children in? 'Tis many and many a year since then, and the old house on the hill no longer echoes to childish feet, and the yard is still, so still. But I see it all as the shadows creep, and though many the years have been since then, I can hear my mother ask, Are all the children in? I wonder if, when the shadows fall on the last short earthly day, when we say goodbye to the world outside, all tired with our childish play, when we step out into that other land where mother so long has been, will we hear her ask, just as of old, Are all the children in?